Janmad yasya yato niviyad itaratas chati swavigya swarat. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyantiyat Surayaha Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimaya Yatra Trisagomesha Damna Sena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva. O all-pervading personality of Godhead. I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. Is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations in the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitravatra paramo nirmatsranam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapatrayon mulanam Srimad Bhagvatam Mahamuni Krite Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avurudyatetra Kriti Behi Sususabhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpaturu galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam bibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur aho raskabu vibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, this mature fruit of the desire to Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantakstohi Abadani Vidunoti Srihit Satam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastaprayesu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhakti bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobhadayaschaye cheta itar anavidam stitvam sattve prasidhati. By development of devotional service, one becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarvasamsaya siyante chasya karmani drista evat manishware. Thus, therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Oh, that's wait, did I? Okay. Now, thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 29. Granina gandham rasanena vairasam rupam chadristya swasanam tvachaiva shotrena chopetya nabo gunatvam pranena chakutim upaiti yogi. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing, forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the air by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Beyond the sky, there are subtle coverings, resembling the elementary coverings of the universes. The gross coverings are a development of partial ingredients of the subtle causes. So the yogi or devotee, along with liquidation of the gross elements, relinquishes the subtle causes like the aroma by smelling. The pure spiritual spark, the living entity, thus becomes completely cleansed of all material contamination to become eligible for entrance into the kingdom of God. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. what we have learned in these verses, actually from the second chapter, the second canto, second chapter, is how difficult it is to free oneself from these gross and subtle bodies and influences that keeps us attached to the material world. It's very difficult, especially by the mechanical yoga system process. But therefore, Prabhupada talks about the yogi and the devotee. It's very important that we see that both are transcendentalists, but one is endeavoring very difficultly to overcome the influence of the material nature, and the other is happily performing devotional service, and therefore is freed completely without all this technical and very difficult process that the yogi is going through. In other words, the same purpose can be achieved by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, taking prasadam that's been offered to the deities, and dancing in front of the deities, and regularly hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam spoken by genuine devotees, going on Sankirtan, and organizing festivals, and celebrating all the holy days in the year, Janmashtami and Radhastami and so forth, and accepting bona fide spiritual master, and always depending on the advice and instructions given by bona fide spiritual master and masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus. And the ultimate guru is Krishna, and especially in his transcendental form of Lord Chaitanya, who initiated this Harinam Sankirtan movement. So we see that the yogi has a difficult process, and devotees have a very transcendental and happy process. Rajavidya Rajaguyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha-vagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartam Avyayam. It says, Krishna tells Arjuna, this transcendental knowledge is that gives direct perception of the self, and is the most secret of all secrets. It is the king of all knowledge, and it's happily performed, and it's unending. So, on the other hand, it says that the klesha dikaritaras te sam avyakta shakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukam dehad vadbir avapyate. Bhagavad Gita 12:5. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. So, but then he says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Prita, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So, Yetu sarvani karmani mae sanyasya matpara ananyanaiva yogena mam dhyayantu pasate te samaham samudarta mrityu samsara Sagarat Bhavani nachirat parta maya vesita chetasam. So Krishna is tesam aham samudarta, mrityu samsara sagrat. He will is the swift deliverer of the devotee from all entanglement in the material world. So, why should we undertake something that is not possible to do in Kali Yuga? We should do what is possible to do, and that is pure Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada and the great acharyas have taught us, and Lord Chaitanya especially. So, this last two verses are 12th chapter, verses 6 and 7. So, this is a special benediction of Lord Chaitanya, knowing very well how difficult it is in Kali Yuga to be Krishna conscious, because there's so many negative things. Therefore, he's given this happy and transcendental process. As Krishna predicted, he says that Rajavidya Rajaguna Pavitam Idam Uttamam is Pratyaksha Bhagavam Dharmam Susukam Kartam Avyayam. Susukam Kartam Avyayam. It means it's happily performed and it's eternal. It's unending. Unending bliss. So that is Anandamaya Abhyasat, this unending bliss that one can perceive and experience in Krishna consciousness, even in the material world, even with the material body. One can connect through the holy name and this dancing to the ecstasy of chanting the holy name. That's very important that we understand this difference between the mechanical process and the devotional process. Okay, so, but on the other hand, all of us have gone through a horrible experience of becoming attached to the material world. And this is explained in depth in the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 37th verse, 11 to 37. Vayam dvitiya binavesata syad, isad apetasya viparya yo smriti, tanmaya yato buddha avajetvam tam bhaktyai kai yesam guru devatmana. So this says, fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. Therefore, an intelligent person should engage unflinchingly in the unalloyed devotional service to the Lord under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master whom he should accept as his worshipable deity and as his very life and soul. So this is a big verse, 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 37th verse. And it's very significant because it explains how we've become entangled in this material world. Now, according to Sridhar Swami, Srila Sridhar Swami, who's in the another Vaishnava Sampradaya. He's not in the Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, but he's in a bona fide the Rudra Sampradaya. So he says that an objection may be raised that since fear is caused by ignorance, it can be dispelled by knowledge, and there's no need to worship the Supreme Lord. So then he says, the living entity falsely identifies with his material body, family, society, and so on, and he simply has to give up this false identification. Then what will Maya be able to do? So this is very interesting objection, right? But in reply to this, Srila Sridhar Goswami says, he quotes a verse, Daivihi esugunamai, mama maya duratyaya, mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. So this is a very famous verse. We've heard it many times, 7th chapter, 14th verse. And Krishna says, now, what we're going to read now is what you would call, this is the translation that's in the Bhagavad Gita also. He says, this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Okay. However, Prabhupada, or the explanation of this verse follows, and it says that the living entity is called Jiva Tattva. And the Jiva Tattva is one of the potencies. We are one of the potencies of the Supreme Lord. The constitutional position of the Jiva Tattva is what you would call, well, the position of the Jiva Tattva is called Tadastha Shakti, or marginal, because we as Jivas, we can go either toward Krishna or we can go toward Maya. We have that choice. We have that, let's say, limited free will. So, the constitutional position, well, our position is we're marginal. But because we're minute, we are, let's say, less than an atomic particle that's part and parcel of Krishna, we are eternally dependent on the Lord for our existence, because we're part and parcel of the Lord. That can never change. That's their constitutional position. So this is also confirmed in the Vedic literature, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. So we are an eternal, and Krishna is eternal, but the difference between us, the Jivas, and Krishna is he's maintaining all of us, and we are dependent on his maintenance. In other words, every day the sun comes up, and its light is spread throughout the universe. Well, it doesn't come up, doesn't go down. The sun is always shining, but we perceive it as coming up in the morning and then disappearing at night because of our limited position. But it's supplying all the energy, heat and light that makes the universe work and maintains it. Many things are happening because of the heat and light of the sun. The seasons change, and at one point all the plants many of the plants seem to disappear. There are certain plants called evergreen trees. They don't disappear, right? Their needles are still there, but the leaves on the deciduous trees, they all fall down, and the tree becomes bare. But the evergreen trees, they are evergreen, so they don't lose their needles or whatever they have, and then when spring comes, it all comes back again, mysteriously, and things sprout again. And there's new, actually on the evergreen tree, there's new needles that are light green. Those things are full of vitamin C. It's the vitamin C in the northern hemispheres. So Krishna is supplying the needs of all the innumerable living entities. This Katha Upanishad 2.1.12. And Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. No one's equal to him. No one's greater than him. Ekale Ishwara Krishna Ara Sabhabritya. Krishna is the only independent controller. All the living entities depend on him. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 5.142. Okay, so, and we're the parts and parcels of Krishna, Mamaivam Sa Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That's Bhagavad Gita 15:7. And we're Sanatana. We are eternal. So, this is all, and now, the original point is that our forgetfulness is due to ignorance. So if we have knowledge, then we can overcome that ignorance. So what's the need of worshiping Krishna? See? However, the potency of the Lord that enlightens us in the Lord's service is called Chit Shakti. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that when the living entity develops a spirit of independence, he's forced to come to the material world where he enters into various types of petty and undesirable behavior that create a fearful situation for him. The Bahiranga Shakti, the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord, covers all trace of the Chit Shakti, or knowledge Shakti, and imposes one material body after another upon the living entity for his gross sinful enjoyment. As further punishment, the living entity who has given up his loving relationship with Krishna loses all power to perceive the eternal blissful form of the Supreme Lord, who is his actual shelter. Instead, the living entity becomes attached to many temporary, phantasmagorical forms, such as his personal body, the bodies of his family members and friends, his nation, his city, with its buildings and cars and innumerable types of ephemeral material scenery. In such a state of gross ignorance, the idea of returning to one's original identity no longer even crosses the mind. This is serious, very serious. So that by the laws of God, the three modes of material nature are constantly in conflict, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. So, sometimes the mode of ignorance is prominent. Sometimes the mode of passion is prominent and control and overwhelms ignorance and goodness. Sometimes the mode of goodness is prominent and is more significant than passion and ignorance. So they're fluctuating all the time, these modes. Prabhupada describes it as, or it's described here, by bewildered by the interactions of the modes of material nature, or this conflict of the modes of material nature, which one is going to dominate. So eventually, the living entity is bewildered by the interactions of these modes, and he comes to the conclusion of relativity and assumes that God and worship of God are simply byproducts of the relative contradictory interactions of the modes, of nature's modes. This is very important because if you read philosophy, you'll see that the atheistic or impersonalists, they say everything is relative. In fact, this is also stated in Bhagavad Gita, in the chapter where the demons are described, chapter 16. It says, they say that this world is unreal with no foundation, no God in control. They say it has produced a sex desire and has no cause other than lust. The demonic conclude that the world is phantasmagoria, meaning an illusion, a fantastic illusion. There's no cause and effect, no controller, no purpose. Everything is unreal. They say that the cosmic manifestation arises due to chance material actions and reactions. They do not think the world was created by God for a certain purpose. Well, remember yesterday we said, what is the mystery of material creation? It's another chance for the living entities to free themselves from the entanglement of material lust, avarice, and greed, and all those things. So the material nature does have a purpose, but they say it has no purpose. They do not think that the world was created by God for a certain purpose. They have their own theory that the world has come about in its own way and that there is no reason to believe that there is a God behind it. For them, there's no difference between spirit and matter. They do not accept the Supreme Spirit. Everything is matter only, and the whole cosmos is supposed to be a mass of ignorance. According to them, everything is void, and whatever manifestation exists is due to our ignorance in perception. They take it for granted that all manifestation and diversity is a display of ignorance, just as a dream we may create so many things which actually have no existence. Then when we are awake, we see that everything is simply a dream. But factually, although the demons say that life is a dream, they are very expert in enjoying this dream. Prabhupada is amazing. So, and then, and they say everything is relative. There's no absolute. Well, that is the materialistic way of presenting their understanding of the universe and man's purpose in this universe. And you understand, if you come to these type of conclusions, then your only hope in life is to engage in sense gratification. Therefore, one will waste their whole life running after sense gratification, and then they die and they have to take birth again. So that is a curse on people, a curse through misinformation. So these modes are in constant conflict, and they bewilder people, and then they come to the conclusion of relativity and assume that God and worship of God are simply byproducts of the relative, contradictory interactions of nature's modes. This is very significant philosophy. And when you say everything is relative, there's no absolute, then you can never figure out what's the right thing to do. You always come up with the conclusion of doing the wrong thing, thinking it's right, because everything is relative. Nothing is absolute. So devotees believe that there is absolute truth. There is absolute Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, we say it every day, don't we? We say that in the, what we repeat, that thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, that is, understanding the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. This asamsayam samagram is a very important principle, that there is a supreme absolute truth, and it's a person. The atheists and the Mayavadis, they will disagree. The Mayavadis disagree it's a person, and the atheists disagree that there's such a thing as supreme absolute truth. Okay, so then Prabhupada, this purport continues. In the name of anthropological, sociological, or psychological perspective, the living entity falls deeper and deeper into the darkness of materialistic ignorance, dedicating himself to mundane piety, economic development, sense gratification, or speculation, in which he regards the absolute as lacking variety and personality, which he assumes to be products of the interactions of nature's modes. So this is all the theory of the demons and atheists. Then the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord is durat yaya. It is impossible to escape. Now this is a very important point. Daivihi esa gunamai mamamaya durat yaya. So that verse, Mam evaye papadyante mayame tam tarate. So this duratyaya word in the verse 7:14 actually means that it's impossible to escape the clutches of Maya without direct mercy of Krishna. So, what is Krishna consciousness? It's asking for the direct mercy of Krishna through the mercy of Guru and Guru Parampara. You see, whereas we don't directly ask Krishna, we ask through the Guru Parampara. So here, it's impossible to escape the chokehold of Maya on our own abilities. We have to have the help or the mercy, the direct mercy of Krishna. So this has to be understood. The example may be given that when the sun is covered by clouds, no man-made apparatus, no man-made machine, let's say, can remove the clouds from the sky. But the sun itself, which created the clouds, can immediately burn away the cloudy covering and reveal itself. This is a brilliant example Prabhupada is giving to understand that there are things that we cannot do. We cannot make the clouds dissipate. But we can rely on the mercy of the Lord, and because the Lord controls the sun can create the cloud, the sun can make the cloud move, and the sun can make the cloud go away. Okay. Similarly, when we become covered by the illusory potency of the Lord, which was just described as duratya, impossible to escape, we identify with our temporary material body. That's when we become covered by the illusory potency of the Lord. And thus we are always in fear. Yeah, because the body is temporary. So we're always fearful. Just look at how fearful people are in India right now. Right? And we're going to get to that point in a second. But when we surrender to the Lord himself, he can immediately free us from this illusion of I am the body, and these are my relatives, this is my country, this is my city, this is my car, this is my neighborhood. Well, these are all things that are going to disappear in time, so they're not actually permanent. And identifying with them only keeps us entangled in the material world. Then what do we identify with? Well, the Mayavadis would say nothing, but or just the Brahman, the effulgence. No, we should identify with Krishna, who's the primary quality of everything, right? He's the source of the Brahma Jyoti. He's the source of the material nature. He's the source of the jivas. Therefore, he should be the real focus of our attention. So the material world is padam padam yat vipadam. It is dangerous at every step. When a living entity understands that he's not the material body, but an eternal servant of God, his fear is vanquished. In other words, his fear is finished. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also says, Atra bhaktai samsara bandhan na betavyam sahi bhakto pravartamanasya swata eva payati. In the Bhagavata Dharma, devotees have no need to fear the bondage of material existence. That fear goes away of its own accord for one who engages in devotional service. Okay, so this is something that we should inform the people of India, everywhere, but especially the people of India right now, because they're very fearful that because one after the other is dying from this COVID. Now let's hear what Prabhupada says about this. So we said that India is the land of Dharma. It has all these holy Dhammas there, right? And Lord Ramachandra appeared there, Krishna appeared there, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also so many great saints have appeared, and other incarnations have appeared there. So what do we make of this? Prabhupada says He says, in a letter to Gopal Krishna in March 16, 1969, he says, when India was divided into Hindustan and Pakistan, there was good opportunity for the Hindu Indians to follow strictly the principles of Bhagavad Gita, and the state religion should have been declared Krishna consciousness. It's Prabhupada's writing in 1969, right? Mahatma Gandhi was a great advocate of Bhagavad Gita, and when he was alive, I requested him to preach, but I did not receive any favorable reply from him. I don't know if you've ever heard the letter Prabhupada, wrote to him, because he was too much politically contaminated. So when we're contaminated too much by something in the material world, we can't follow Krishna consciousness strictly, even though we talk about it, right? Gandhi, even a quote by Gandhi was on the jacket of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, right? So, well, even Gandhi was reading the Bhagavad Gita every day, something like that. Gandhi said, whenever I'm in trouble, I always read the Bhagavad Gita, and it relieves my anxiety or whatever, So anyway, taking consideration of India's present governmental policy in the matter of educated public opinion, I do not think that in India there's any immediate possibility of spreading Krishna consciousness very seriously. Under the circumstances, if you, he's talking to Gopal Krishna, go to India, you have to make some propaganda against the attitude of the government and the public. What is this propaganda? Your desire of opening many temples is very laudable. But unless you prepare some temple worshippers, then the temples will remain vacant. In other words, saying, if you don't have any devotees, what's the use of building temples, right? So, in this age, it is more important to create devotees than to construct temples. There it is. My Guru Maharaj advised me to give more stress on literary work, such as publishing books and magazines in Krishna consciousness, and temple opening is a secondary consideration. I am just trying to open some temples in the Western countries because there is none. So far, India is concerned. Still, there are millions of temples, but gradually the number of temple worshippers is diminishing. That's a fact. It was a fact then, 40 years ago, and it's a fact today. Perhaps you know that recently, within 50 years, our capital, New Delhi, has developed tremendously. But the constructor of the New Delhi city has not erected even a single temple. So this is the tendency. Neither is recommended in the scriptures to give more stress to temple building. The best thing is in this age to propagate this Sankirtan movement. So I shall be very glad to utilize your energy in this Krishna consciousness movement as you are a willing volunteer. May Krishna bless you with more Krishna consciousness activities, and you will feel a glorious life by Krishna's grace. I wish that all of your good desires may be fulfilled without delay. So it's such a nice letter from Prabhupada. But yet, what is he saying? He's saying that there was a possibility when Hindustan and Pakistan divided, there was a good opportunity for the Hindu Indians to follow strictly the principles of Bhagavad Gita. And the state religion should have been declared Krishna consciousness. But because Mahatma Gandhi was more a politician than a devotee, he didn't go in that direction. Prabhupada invited him to come and preach with him Bhagavad Gita throughout India and throughout the whole world. So, this is the problem that's still going on today. The government policy of secularism, the government policy, even with Modi in charge of the government, they're not really explaining why there's so much suffering going on. See? So, why is there so much suffering going on? Well, this is also explained if you go to Mayapur webpage, you'll see that they put there the 10 of the offenses that one should not commit in the holy Dhamma, in the holy places. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur has listed 10 offenses against the holy Dhamma that we must carefully avoid in order to be fully benefited from our visit or residence in the holy Dhamma. To respect one's spiritual master who reveals the Dhamma to the disciple. To think that the holy Dhamma is temporary. To commit violence towards any of the residents of the holy Dhamma or to any of the pilgrims who come there, or to think that they are ordinary people. Srila Prabhupada writes, all the inhabitants of Vrindavana are Vaishnavas. They are all auspicious because somehow or other they always chant the holy name of Krishna. That's in CC Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 5.232 in the purport. To perform mundane activities while living in the holy Dhamma. To utilize the Dhamma for personal economic development by commercializing deity worship and Sankirtan in the holy Dhamma. To think that the holy Dhamma belongs to a mundane country or province, such as Bengal. To think that the Lord's Dhamma is equal to a place connected with some demigod, or to attempt to measure the area of the holy Dhamma. To commit sinful acts while residing in the holy Dhamma. To consider Vrindavan Dhamma as different from Navadvip Dhamma. To blaspheme the Shastras that assert the glorious position of the holy Dhamma. To be faithless and think that the glories of the Dhamma are imaginary. So now comes a very significant statement where Prabhupada says, this is in the Mayapur webpage. You can go there and you look up offenses in the holy Dhamma. Right? They write, Srila Prabhupada explained that the results of all devotional activities performed in the holy Dhamma are magnified 1,000 times. Therefore, one can make rapid advancement if one lives offenselessly in the holy Dhamma. But if we commit offenses, the results of those offenses are also magnified 1,000 times. There it is. Therefore, one is advised to carefully avoid committing any offenses in the holy Dhamma. So, there are many holy Dhammas in India, is it not? And because Lord Rama and Lord Krishna were present there, all of India, or all of Bharat, is a holy Dhamma. Therefore, what's happened because of Gandhi and Nehru is many, many people. It started with the British, but it really accelerated with Nehru and Gandhi. The cities developed tremendously. And huge population went from the country to the cities. And now, because people live one on top of the other in these big cities, they are rife with sinful activity. There's bars, there's meat shops everywhere. There's illicit sex, there's divorce. Everything that's in the West is in India now. And there's wholesale sins being committed, not simply by Muslims or atheists, and there are a lot of atheists now in India also, but by Hindus. So if we believe this, but if we commit offenses, the results of those offenses are also magnified 1,000 times. Therefore, one is advised to carefully avoid committing any offenses in the holy Dhamma. We can see why the reaction to COVID is much more severe in India than anywhere else in the world right now. Okay? Because if you commit sinful activities in these holy places, the reactions are very severe, much more than if you do it in the West. So, should this message go out to the people? Yes. We should be explaining this to all the people in India. You know, this is why this COVID, and COVID is just one wave of the misery There's many other waves coming because there's wholesale sinful activity now in the land, the holy land of India. Okay, let's look at other holy places. Israel. What's going on there? There's constant violence going on there, war. Okay, let's look at other places, other holy places. You have Kashmir. Kashmir used to be a very holy place, right? What's going on there? There's a war going on there. Constant harassment, constant fear. So any place where there is, a holy place and people are wholesale committing sins, there's terrible reactions going on. But India is the worst right now. And we can understand why. It's not because they did Kumbh Mela this year. It's not because they're not social distancing. It's not because they're not all wearing masks. Yeah, those are external things. Maybe that has some bearing, but it's not the real reason. So as long as they keep focusing on something that's not the real reason, there's not going to be any real solution. They have vaccines. They have oxygen tanks. They have hospitals. You can't manage the population of India simply with material, conveniences. Vaccines, hospitals. Hospitals are overwhelmed. There's not enough vaccine. The oxygen tanks, there's not enough beds in the hospital. You can go through the problems. There's not enough doctors. People are getting worn down. Everyone is fearful. So, if everyone takes to chanting Hare Krishna and following the rules and regulations of spiritual life, this whole situation would clear up. That should be our message. You want a solution? This is the real solution. All these other things, vaccines, social distancing, that's not going to solve the problem. That's like blowing on a boil. Let's say you have a boil, right? And boils really get hot, right? So you go like that. So it gives you a little temporary relief, but does it heal the boil? No, not at all. The boil has to be lanced with a knife and squeeze out all the pus, and then put some. Prabhupada tells about an ointment he makes. It's with turmeric and calcium carbonate, and it's heated down to a paste, and then you apply that paste hot on whatever wound you have, to your finger or your hand, and it will cure it very quickly. So you have to find out what is the real cause, and then you can find out what is the real remedy. If you point to the wrong cause, then it's just like this question that Srila Sridhar Swami asks is, if materialists would say that it's ignorance that's causing suffering and causing people to stay under the grip of Maya. If they have knowledge, then they'll be liberated. It's not that they have knowledge. What are you talking about? The knowledge is there. But it's more than knowledge. You have to have the mercy of Krishna. So how to attract the mercy of Krishna? You have to follow Krishna's instructions. Very simple. Okay, we'll stop right there and continue some more tomorrow. So we discussed a lot of things today, especially in a lot of different verses. But the most important thing is that people are suffering unnecessarily due to sinful activities. If they learn how to live a Krishna conscious life, all that will disappear. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Jai
Jaya
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevalava Koti Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma.
Bandamui Savadana Mate.
Bando Mui Savadana Mate.
Bandamui Savadana Mate.
Bando Mui Savadana Mate.
Jara Prasade Hebai Eva Batoria Jam
Jahara Prasade Bhai Emavatoria Jai.
Krishna Prapti Hoja Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Hoja Hoite.
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Site Te Ko Rio Apkya.
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Aikya.
Arna Koriyo Mane Asha. Arna Koriyo
Mane Asa.
Arna Koriyo Mane Asha.
Anako Yomane Asa.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Yo Tamagati.
Shri Guru Charane Rati Eseyu Tamagati.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asa.
Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
E prasade pure sarva asa.
Chakyudana Diloye Janame Janame Prabhu Se
Chaksudana bila hoye.
Janame Janame Prabhu Chakyudana Diloye Janame Janame Prabhu Se
Chaksudana diloye. Janme janme Prabhu se.
Adi Begyan Rude Prakasi To
Divya Gyana Ide Prakasito.
Begyan Ride Prakasito
Divya Gyan Ide Prakasito.
Prema Bhakti Jaite Avidya Nasajate
Prema Bhakti Yaha Hoite Avidya Vinasayate.
Ha Prema Bhakti Jaite Avidya Vinasajate
Prema Bhakti Yaha Hoite Avidya Vinasayate.
Vedega Rachari To
Vedegaya Harachari To.
Vedega Rachari To
Vedegaya Yahar Charito.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Lokana Lokera Jivana Lokena
Lokera Jivana.
Ha Prabhu Karadai Dehamore Padachaya
Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Dehamore Padachaya.
Deveya Sangu Sukri Bhuvana
Ebeya Sukti Bhuvana.
Dupai de Loilo Sharana
Due Padelo Ila Sarana.
Shila Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Shila Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shila Prabhupada
Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada,
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatari Shatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatari.
Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura
Haribo
Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Nitai Gaura Premanandi
EJ Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajika Chasti Tarasakri Srimad is divine. Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ananta Kuti Vaishnava Acharya Harivilas Maharaj Grand Chaitanya Prabhu Radha Srivastava Guru Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Tulassi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samavela Bhakti Nitai Gaur Prema Srila Prabhupada, Patita Prabhupada, all glories to Samaguru, all glories to Samaguru, all glories to Samaguru, all glories to Shiguru, Shiguru, and all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Vishnu. Hari. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection and fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan Ki Jai.